The wait is felt long before the calculation begins. It starts in the spaces that used to be unremarkable and safe: the grocery store aisle, the gas pump, the utility bill waiting in the digital darkness of an inbox. Nothing dramatic has happened yet. There is no sudden catastrophe and no reckless luxury and no irresponsible spending, and yet, somewhere between selecting the basics and reaching the final stage of the checkout, a familiar tension arrives. That silent question begins to echo in the back of the mind. Why does existing feel so difficult now? For many Americans today, everyday shopping has transformed into a form of mental endurance that was never part of the original bargain. It is not that people are consuming more or living more extravagantly. It is that they are constantly bracing for the impact of the final total before they even see it. A simple trip for essentials turns into a relentless series of internal negotiations and silent compromises. Put this item back. Choose the generic brand even if the quality is uncertain. Forgo the small comfort you had planned to enjoy at the end of a long week. You walk out with less than you had before, and yet you have somehow paid more than you ever thought possible. The weight does not vanish when you leave the store and step into the parking lot. The receipt lingers in your mind like a shadow. The number haunts your thoughts during the drive home. It resurfaces when you open your banking application on your phone, or when the next automated bill hits your account, or when you tell yourself that you will find a way to balance the scales next week. This is not merely about currency leaving an account. It is about the immense mental energy required to make the same small decisions over and over again, just to remain stationary in a world that is moving against you. What makes this especially haunting is the feeling of doing everything right and still failing to find peace. People are working full-time hours. Some are working multiple jobs and sacrificing sleep to keep up. They are budgeting and they are cutting back and they are avoiding the unnecessary with disciplined focus. And yet, shopping for the basic requirements of life feels more stressful than it has ever been in their memory. That disconnect, that widening gap between human effort and the actual result, is where the anxiety takes root and grows. This is not a video about blaming habits or pointing to poor choices made in a vacuum. It is not a lecture on inflation charts or complex economic theory that feels distant from the kitchen table. It is about the lived reality hidden behind those cold statistics. It is about why a simple task like buying groceries is now saturated with a sense of dread. It is about why the stress manifests before the receipt even prints. And it is about why so many millions of people are quietly wondering if this perpetual strain is the new permanent reality for the American family. Understanding the mechanics beneath the surface is vital for survival. This pressure does not stem from personal failure or a lack of character. It is the result of a profound structural shift in the way our world is organized, one that millions of people are experiencing simultaneously, often without realizing that their struggle is a shared national experience. One of the most damaging myths in our society today is the belief that if you are struggling, you must be the one at fault. That if money feels tight, it is because you did not work hard enough or plan well enough or sacrifice enough of your own life. But when you listen to the stories of the people on the ground, a different reality emerges. There is the individual who saves diligently every payday, determined to be responsible and build a future, only to withdraw those savings days later for fuel and bread, not because of a splurge, but because the basics demanded it. There is the worker putting in extra hours and sacrificing small joys like a coffee or a movie, only to find that progress remains just beyond their reach. These are not stories of carelessness. They are stories of people trying to survive in an environment that is shifting beneath their feet like quicksand. When more than half of the country identifies the cost of necessities as a primary source of stress, it is no longer an individual problem that can be solved with a better spreadsheet. It is a structural crisis of the highest order. You do not have millions of people feeling the same exhaustion at the same time because they all suddenly forgot how to manage their finances. You get that kind of collective experience when the rules of the entire system have changed without a public announcement. And yet, the messaging from the institutions of power remains the same as it was 30 years ago. People are still told to follow advice that was written for a world that no longer exists. Cut back, save more, make better choices. While those habits are important, they no longer provide a guarantee of security or relief. For many households, there is simply nothing left to cut without sacrificing health or safety. The margin for error has evaporated entirely. That is where the stress becomes a deep and heavy weight on the soul, not from a single bad month, but from the realization that effort no longer creates the stability it once promised. You can do everything, right, and still feel like you are falling behind every single day. When this happens repeatedly, the mind searches for a culprit to blame. It often turns inward and eats away at self-esteem. But the truth is much harder than personal failure. The cost of a stable life has risen much faster than the wages meant to sustain that life. Essentials now claim a massive and unfair share of total household income. And shopping, which was once a routine part of life, has become a stark reminder of how fragile the balance truly is. Acknowledging this is not about surrendering responsibility or becoming a victim. It is about understanding the landscape you are forced to navigate every day. You cannot make sense of the stress without acknowledging the system that produces it. For a long time, rising prices came with a silent promise that gave us hope. They were temporary. You tightened your belt and you waited for the storm to pass, trusting that things would return to normal soon. That belief gave the stress a finish line. What defines this moment in history is that the finish line has vanished. Prices may no longer be climbing at the frantic pace of a few years ago. Instead, the costs of daily life have settled into a new and much higher baseline. Groceries do not become affordable again just because the rate of increase slows down. Utilities do not reset to their old rates. The increase is permanent, and the people are expected to adapt as if the world has not fundamentally changed for the worse. This is where the mental damage is done to the average person. When a price hike is brief, you can plan around it and endure. When it lasts forever, the act of planning becomes a burden that never ends. Every decision becomes a painful question mark. Should you buy now or wait for a sale that may never come? Is this the new reality, or will things get even worse by next year if you change your habits today? Will it even matter by next month when the next increase arrives? That uncertainty dictates how you live your entire life. People are not just spending less money. They are spending more defensively and with more fear. A trip to the store becomes a rehearsal for future disasters. You are not just thinking about the meal for tonight. You are wondering if your budget can withstand this pattern for months or years to come. The brain stays in a state of high alert, constantly scanning for the next financial blow to the family. This stress is cumulative, a small increase here, an extra fee there. On their own, they are not catastrophic. Together, they create the feeling that the ground is rising to meet your chin until you cannot breathe. When prices stop feeling temporary, the routine of shopping stops being a chore and starts being a warning of what is to come. It is a reminder that stability is an illusion that can be taken away at any moment. That no matter how carefully you manage your resources, the room for comfort is shrinking. The question changes from "can I afford this?" to something much more dangerous and existential. That is the moment when stress stops being a reaction and starts being a permanent condition of life. This is why a single shopping trip feels overwhelming to so many people. It is not one big choice that breaks the spirit. It is dozens of small choices stacked on top of one another until the mind is exhausted. Standing in the aisle, people are weighing options that used to be automatic and easy. Do you trust the quality you know? Or do you take a chance on the cheaper alternative that might be a waste of money? Do you buy enough for the week? Or do you stretch it and hope for the best? Do you put the item back now? Or do you risk the embarrassment and stress at the register in front of everyone? None of these choices are grand or heroic, but they demand constant attention and judgment and restraint. This is the true face of mental fatigue in the modern era. It is not a lack of intelligence or a lack of self-control. It is the exhaustion of being forced to negotiate with yourself every single hour of every single day. The brain never gets a moment of rest because every choice carries a heavy consequence for the future. Even when the difference is only a few dollars, the weight of the decision feels massive because the margin for survival is so thin. Over time, this leads to a profound depletion of the spirit and the body. People leave the store feeling tired even if they stayed within their limits. They do not feel like they succeeded in being a good consumer. They feel like they survived an attack. That mindset stays with you throughout the day. It colors your perspective when the next bill arrives in the mail. It shapes your mood when you realize you have to repeat the entire exhausting process again next week and the week after that. Experts call this decision fatigue, but that term is too clinical for the pain it causes. It is the fatigue of choosing under duress. It is the knowledge that small mistakes can lead to major problems for your children or your home. It is the understanding that you are walking a tightrope without a net while everyone tells you that everything is fine. And just when you hope technology will provide an escape or a solution, it often makes the environment even more demanding and complex. The move to online shopping did not reduce the number of decisions you have to make. It multiplied them by a factor of 10. It was supposed to be a solution for the busy family. Fewer trips, easier comparisons, less stress. In theory, convenience was the goal. In practice, it removed the physical boundaries that kept life manageable and contained in a physical store. The options end when you reach the back wall online. The options are infinite and the comparison never ends. There is always another store, another review, another deal that might be better if you just keep looking for one more hour. The choice is no longer between two products on a shelf. It is between buying now or searching forever for a better price. This creates a quiet anxiety that persists even after the purchase is finished and the box is on the way. Did I spend too much? Was there a better coupon I missed? Was I tricked by the algorithm into spending more? Instead of closure and satisfaction, there is doubt and regret. And when doubt becomes a habit, the transaction never feels truly complete. Algorithms add a layer of invisible pressure designed to exploit your fears. Recommendations nudge you toward things you do not need but feel you must have. Timers create a false sense of urgency that forces quick and bad decisions. Notifications suggest that resources are running out and you must act now. The pressure is constant, and it is designed to keep your mind engaged long after the practical need has been met. For those already feeling the strain, this is a cognitive tax that drains the battery of the mind. Studies suggest that constant online shopping is linked to higher stress levels for those with financial anxiety. Convenience has a hidden and heavy cost. It extends the decision-making process into every hour of your life. You do not just shop for an hour. You research and you compare and you second-guess your own judgment until you are too tired to care. What was once a contained task has become an open loop that never offers the satisfaction of being finished, and when closure disappears, the stress follows you home and sits at the dinner table with you. The receipt takes on a deeper and more painful meaning. It is no longer just a record of a transaction. It has become a verdict on your performance as a human being. The number at the bottom represents whether you managed your life well or whether you failed the test of adulthood. People look at the total and compare it to a version of life that no longer exists but is still fresh in their minds. A version where the same cart cost half as much and the future felt bright. When the math does not align with your expectations, you blame yourself because it is easier than blaming the world. Did I buy the wrong things? Could I have been more disciplined? Why is this so hard for me when everyone else seems to be doing fine? This judgment does not fade with the sunset. It lingers in your pocket and on your phone. It influences every future choice you make that week and that month. This emotional weight is felt by everyone, regardless of their income level. Even those who are technically stable feel the erosion of their comfort and the rise of their anxiety. Spending no longer feels harmless or fun. Every purchase is a question about whether you will have enough for the next decade. Over time, shopping becomes tied to your sense of self-worth and dignity. Staying under budget is a small and desperate victory. Going over is a personal failure that hurts. But the truth is that the scale has been tilted against you from the start. Prices have risen while our expectations remained rooted in a past that is not coming back. The receipt is a mirror that people are afraid to look into. It reflects the anxiety of a future that feels unpredictable and cold. When people say that life feels harder now than it was 10 years ago, they are not just being nostalgic for a simpler time. They are observing a real and measurable shift in the balance of human effort and economic reward. In previous decades, rising costs were usually met with rising incomes that allowed families to grow. It was not a perfect system, but there was a sense of moving forward and building something real. Today that balance is broken and the bridge is out. The cost of a basic existence has outpaced the wages that sustain it by a wide margin. Essentials like housing and food and energy now consume the majority of what people earn with their hard work. This changes how you think and how you dream. You feel like you are running at full speed just to stay in the same place. And this era comes with unique pressures that our parents never had to face. High costs have arrived alongside a relentless stream of digital information that tells you how you are falling behind. The generational gap makes this even more painful for everyone involved. Older generations remember a time when a single income could support a family and still provide a sense of peace and a house. Younger generations are trying to use that same map to navigate a world where the roads have been destroyed by greed and change. That disconnect leads to a profound frustration and anger. Not because people want an easy life without work, but because the rules they were taught no longer produce the same outcomes they were promised. This is why a trip to the store carries such a heavy weight for the soul. It is about what those items in the cart represent for the future. Each price tag is a reminder of how much effort it takes to maintain a life that used to be standard and attainable for everyone. When that effort is required for years without any sign of relief, it is no longer a phase you are going through. It is a condition of existence. It shapes your goals and your dreams and your sense of belonging in your own country. This pressure seeps into your relationships and poisons them. Conversations that should be light and loving become tactical and cold. Couples argue about necessities like milk and eggs instead of dreams and vacations. Parents carry the silent burden of trying to provide a stable childhood in an unstable world where the ground is always moving. The emotional cost of money cannot be contained in a bank account. It spills into every interaction you have with the people you love. Mentally, the impact is devastating for the long term. Constant calculation keeps the brain in a state of low-level panic and alert. There is never a moment where you feel settled or safe. What is most alarming is how this has become the new normal that we just accept. We do not call it a crisis on the news. We call it just the way things are now. That acceptance does not mean the stress is gone or that we have adapted well. It means the stress has been absorbed into the very background of our lives until we cannot see it anymore. It is a human response to a system that demands constant vigilance for every penny. Shopping stress is simply the most visible symptom of a deeper exhaustion of the American spirit. When you step back and look at the full picture, it is clear that this is about more than just the price of groceries. It is about what those grocery aisles reveal about our future. The stress you feel is a signal of a system that has become too heavy for the average person to carry alone. Prices stayed high while the margin for error vanished into the air. In this environment, even small decisions are heavy with consequence. Routine purchases are loaded with a meaning they should not have. This stress is slow and it is persistent and it is familiar to everyone you pass in the street. It affects everyone. Not because they are making mistakes or being lazy, but because they are all facing the same relentless pressure from the same direction. Understanding this reframes the entire experience from one of shame to one of clarity. The explanation is not your weakness or your inability to save. It is a structural shift in how much it costs to be stable and who is allowed to afford that stability. Recognizing this does not fix the prices or lower the bills today, but it does restore your perspective and your dignity. Everyday life feels more stressful because it has become a constant negotiation with an uncertain and demanding future. You are not alone in this feeling. Even if you feel like you are the only one struggling, it is a shared reality for millions, even if it is experienced in the silence of the checkout line. So if you have ever stood in that line wondering why you are so tired and why your chest feels tight, know that you are not imagining it. You are responding to an economy that asks for everything you have to give and offers very little peace or certainty in return. Understanding that truth is the first step toward finding clarity in a world that feels increasingly out of focus and out of reach.